Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unfiltered Table, a new series hosted by ACNET, a unified talent selection platform. At ACNET, our mission is simple: to help organizations and professionals build real momentum in their careers, their teams, and their futures. We believe better hiring decisions create better workplaces, stronger businesses, and a more meaningful professional growth for everyone involved.
People decisions don't behave like financial and operation decisions, right? Because humans uh, are not linear. If you look at, some data, the U.S. Department of Labor data shows 46% of the new hires fail within the 18 months. Nearly 90% of those failures are driven by behavioral adaptability and cultural misalignment. It's not capability, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of organizations who admit that they hired wrong people. The issue is not leadership intent. It is all about the design of the decision which they've taken, right? Fail.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Unfiltered Table. I'm your host, Mahima Gupta, and today we're going to be talking about why organizations still struggle to make confident talent decisions even with experienced leaders. Most organizations believe that as their leaders become more experienced, talent decisions become easier. But oftentimes what happens is the opposite. As roles become senior and stakes become higher, people's decisions become slower, more debated, and harder to stand behind. This episode explores why confident talent decisions remain elusive even at the highest levels, and what leaders consistently are missing when it comes to evaluating talent. Today we have an amazing guest, Vidya Mathews, somebody who is very well versed in this subject. Hi Vidya, welcome to the Unfiltered Table. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. What about you?
I'm doing well. Do you mind telling us a little bit about what you do for work and what you've been doing the last few years?
All right, it's been close to 3 decades of doing the same stuff.
It's
I've been
amazing.
a coach, I've been a trainer, and I've been training talent to reach where they are today. So that's my job.
That's amazing. That sounds really cool. We're happy to have you here today, and I'm excited to get started in this conversation. So I guess we'll just start at the top here. There's an assumption that as leaders gain experience, people decisions should get easier. So I guess my question to you is, why do talent decisions become more complex as roles become senior or critical?
So there's a saying, at junior levels, you manage tasks. At senior levels, you manage consequences. So I've heard one CEO saying once, I've never lost a sleep over bad spreadsheets, but I've lost plenty over bad leadership. Higher. So this is funny, but this is the fact, right? At senior leadership levels, performance stop being about execution, and it's all about judgment, influence, and decision making under ambiguity. So I was just reading McKinsey research, which shows that senior leadership spends around 60 to 70% of their time making decisions with incomplete and conflicting information. Now, that means traditional indicators like your resumes, your past roles, your early wins become weaker signals, right? And the cost of failure also rises sharply. So I think the other day I was reading through the HBR Harvard Business Review, which was talking about an estimate that failed executive hires cost 3 to 5 times their annual salary. And in the same, cases, I think it would also cost up to 10x when it comes to lost momentum and cultural damage, downstream attrition also. So, critically for this room, outcome takes time, right? So executive effectiveness shows that it takes 12 to 24 months before impact becomes fully visible. So boards and CEOs are making irreversible decisions long before the results are validating them. And
Wow.
that's why it doesn't simplify talent decisions at top. It actually raises the stake.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like what you're describing is that these decisions that a lot of leaders are making, they carry a different kind of weight. But so I guess kind of like a little segue question for me is as the roles get higher, does the right answer become less obvious?
Yes.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so that actually brings me into my next question, which is what makes decisions involving people harder than financial or operational decisions?
If people behaved like financial models, HR would have been a lot of easier job or maybe, far more boring job. Pe- People decisions don't behave like financial and operation decisions, right? Because humans uh, are not linear.
Mhm.
So if you look at, some data, the US Department of Labor data shows 46% of the new hires fail within the 18 months. Nearly 90% of those failures are driven by behavioral adaptability and cultural misalignment. It's not capability, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So there are a lot of organizations who admit that they hired wrong people. Uh, the issue is not leadership intent. It is all about the design of the decision which they've taken, right?
So
There,
if
yeah.
leaders are making big financial decisions all the time,
Mhm.
and correct me if I'm mistaken, but hiring somebody especially is a huge financial decision. Why does it feel riskier for organizations when it comes to hiring people?
So it's because neurological component, right? So if you again, I'm so sorry, but I am going to quote a lot of these reviews because I constantly
Please,
read papers. So
please
the
do.
Harvard Business Review actually once cited that neuroscience research showing social judgment activates threats and the reward centers more strongly than the analytical decisions, right? So the
Mhm.
leaders unconsciously project potential, trust, and familiarity. And there is no immediate setback or immediate feedback loop uh, to correct those assumptions.
Okay, so is it more like organizations tend to go for people that feel more comfortable, somebody that necessarily like or reflects somebody else that works for them or maybe reflects themselves?
I completely agree with you. I couldn't have agreed with you more than, what you're saying is correct. So people, decisions combine ambiguity, emotion, reputational risk, and making it, unequally difficult at senior levels. Junior levels, because most of their work is very technical, right? But as senior levels, when we start taking more decisions, this becomes a dangerous thing.
Okay. Um, okay. All right. So if people decisions are already presenting as more complex, and organizations are still relying heavily on interviews to make them, um, what do interviews often leave leaders feeling confident, but why do interviews often leave leaders feeling confident but still wrong if they're relying so heavily on it? And we already understand that interviews and anything involving people are going to be more complex.
Good question. Interviews are one of the few business processes where we make millions of dollars of decision based on 1 hour of conversation and then we feel great about it, right?
Mm.
It's like a bit of taking a test drive in a car around the block, assuming that it'll help us handle the winter pass on the mountain. right?
Yeah.
So interviews feel a bit decisive, but data is sobering. Most of the meta-analysis in hiring research, especially done by Schmidt and Hunter, shows that the unstructured interviews predict future performances only by 14 to 26%. Barely better than a chance, right?
Yeah.
Even structured interviews only improve prediction by 50 to 57%. Now, this is something which one of my friend from SHRM spoke about. So, what interviews really generate is confidence, not clarity. So, when leaders are feeling comfortable because the conversation went well, not because the risks are meaningful or reduced. So, at senior levels where failure is costly, the false confidence is even more dangerous. So, that's what we are talking about.
So it kind of goes back to leaders leaning more into comfort than competency. And then also, I feel like that kind of goes into it's, especially when you just have one interview and you're making such a big decision.
Uh-huh.
Um, it goes into, okay, we're hiring this person based on the way they speak, not on whether they are going to be a good leader or whether they are going to be good in the position. It's just kind of like how we feel when we're talking to them.
True that. Completely agree with you on that.
Okay. So that confidence is interesting because it often feels very real in the moment, I think. But clearly something important is missing because that's why we wouldn't be here today, right?
Uh-huh.
There are still issues that are presented to leaders all the time, and if we continue to go down this path, then nothing is going to change. So, what critical signals rarely surface in standard interviews?
Uh, it's an interesting one because I've never met a candidate who says, under pressure, I get to be defensive, or under pressure, I blame others, or I stop listening.
Yeah. Yeah, no one's sitting there being completely honest about everything. It's kind of it's like when your interviewer asks, "Oh, like what are things that you struggle with?" You're gonna create the best things to struggle with.
So, what happens is all these things. Let's talk about, right. Uh, how someone has made decisions under pressure, or how a person responds to ambiguity or conflict, or maybe what did they do when an outcome failed. All these questions are never revealed during a standard interview, right? It's just stories which we hear.
Hmm.
So senior leaders actually fail because these failures are causing rigidity, defensiveness, or maybe poor learning behaviors, right? No lack of experience, and I'm not saying no lack, but it's not the lack of experience and
Yeah.
or intelligence, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, these behaviors, specifically while we are talking about interviews, are the least equipped to surface when you are talking, right? So I have seen, because I have done, and I'm also currently, into uh, job, elevations, or maybe, when we sit for these senior position journeys, we do see that job simulations or scenario based assessments, right? They can reach to an 80 to 85% of predictive accuracy when combined with a structured evaluation. And that's what is important. But what happens is we tend to ask very hypothetical questions, not knowing whether the person is actually telling us the truth, right?
Okay, yeah, no, that does make sense. So, I mean, yeah, we can agree that these issues that we're talking about definitely don't show up naturally in an interview, right? So do you think that it's more candidates kind of avoid these topics and avoid these issues, or do you think it's more leaders are kind of failing to address these issues in the beginning and to ask these questions.
Yeah, they tend to just, ask maybe many of them don't even ask these questions. And until and unless, as I said, if we do not do job simulations or scenario-based assessments, which we have a lot coming up, sprouting up nowadays, but not as much. So I was just talking to someone who went through a interview in Europe, and they are very particular about these scenario-based assessment. And this gentleman was having no idea how to go about with it. And when I said, it's been 13 years of you working in the industry, you should have been knowing about all these things. So that's when, the realization came in, saying, oh, yeah, I've been doing this. But when it comes to questioning on paper or on system, that's where, they just get flustered, right? As
Yeah.
an individual. So leaders, I think, should ask these questions, which is systemic, rather than just telling them to make stories, because you can make stories, right? And those who know emotional intelligence, those who know how to read body language, they can read how your eye movement goes. Yeah, it may not give you an exact accurate information, but it gives you a lot of insight, saying whether the first person is making it up, or maybe whether the person was just sitting and bluffing, or actually telling you out of experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like that kind of also will take the comfortability out of the interviewer as well and the leader as well with, okay, like now I'm not just going with the person that I feel most connected with. I'm actually going based on decisions and the way that I'm evaluating this person.
That's so true.
Interesting. So this actually naturally brings up how leaders tend to evaluate candidates in the first place. So why do organizations mistake experience for readiness so often and so quickly?
So we all, Mahima, we all know that someone who had 20 years of experience and someone else who had the same year of experience 20 times, right? Resume don't tell us which one you're hiring, right? We make, uh, mistakes while we are looking for experience in and readiness, right? Because experience is visible in familiar and defensible, because it's in the broad setting, that this is what the person has done, right? But when we talk about industrial organizational psychology, research shows that years of experience often have near zero correlation to what the future performances would be, particularly when the roles increase in complexity, right? And because we are living in the VUCA world, now the delivery or the result is based on speed and delivery pressures, right? Leaders default to see what looks safe. They just fall on the titles. They may look at pedigree or their tenure. So data consistently shows that these are weak predictors of success of the next level. It may tell you what the current level is doing, right? So the readiness is harder to define and harder to test, and even harder to defend. So it easily gets replaced by experience. Why? Because then you are playing on a safe ground.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of leads to people over relying on this experience level because of that safety. Because they know, and it again, it goes back to the last question where it doesn't make the leaders feel uncomfortable. They don't have to put themselves in a position where they have to try and do things differently. They can just, and I feel like also, leaders are they have so much going on, and there's obviously with interviews, there's the time crunch too. So I think it's very interesting talking with you and seeing how all of these different factors overline and then they create this one big issue that we're talking about. Okay, all right. So I guess if experience can be misleading, What should leaders look for instead of titles or tenure?
If you ask my personal opinion, again, of course, this is all about the personal opinion. I am the least interested in what decision someone got right.
Okay.
And I'm more interested in what they did after they went wrong, right? That's where judgment shows.
Okay, so their ability to
Yes,
correct and to evolve is kind of what you're
yes,
saying.
that's
Okay.
correct. So high performing organizations focus on how leaders think, not where they have been, right?
Mhm.
So, the other day we were having this discussion in a leadership meet, and we were talking about Google's Project Oxygen, which found that the leadership effectiveness correlated more with decision quality, learning agility, and I think consistency between values and behaviors than pedigree or tenure, right?
Okay.
So even, if you go by the meta-analytics research, it shows that judgment patterns, trade-off, logic, and learning velocity. And it explains far more variance in performance than in years in role, right? So if I have to make it simple, let me just put it into simpler words. The signal is not experience itself, but how experience has shaped your decision-making power, behaviors.
So, what signals would you say show up early on?
So when we are talking about all these signals, it's, the variance. Spoke about the variance, right?
Mhm.
So that the same situation, how you were able to consistently move between values and behaviors, or how you took that information and made a newer decision which was having a successful outcome on the second try. The first outcome was not that great, but the second one was now, using that learning agility and using the patterns and making it a better one for the next one, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about: learning, picking it up, and implementing it so that your performance is shown over there rather than just saying, oh, you know what, I've been in this industry for donkey's years.
Hmm. So, readiness is more about how somebody thinks rather than what they have already done
That's
in their
true.
work. Okay. All right. So, even when leaders know kind of exactly what they're looking for, the way decisions are made inside organizations adds another level of complexity.
True.
So, who truly owns talent decisions in most organizations?
Okay. Talent decisions are often like group diners. Everyone discusses, everyone agrees. Somehow nobody orders the dish when it comes to, turns out, especially when it turns out bad.
Yeah, that is an interesting analogy. Okay, so can you elaborate a little bit more on that one?
Yep. Yep. In most organizations, talent decisions are shared, but accountability is not, right? So if I have to tell you, HR facilitates, committees advise, leaders approve, uh, but post hire and ownership often disappear.
Hmm.
So, there are research saying that fewer than 5% of hiring managers are formally trained in evidence based selection. Yet, they take some of the most consequential decisions in the enterprise. So, when accountability is diffused, doesn't compound, and the same mistake tend to get repeated. So, that's what the problem is right now. The decisions are not shared.
Okay, so whose decision is it then?
Fewer than 5% of hiring managers,
Hmm.
are actually formally trained. So what happens is they tend to make these consequential decisions for the organization time and again. And because it's just they who need the resource, they end up pushing people saying that, oh, I need this, right? So that's where most of the decisions are taken. Now, if I need someone so badly, I will push the HR to make it happen, right? So that's what the whole point is. Am I trained? Am I trained to look at the right choice? Maybe not.
So as responsibility spreads and becomes bigger, accountability disappears completely.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So if responsibility is kind of spread out amongst a lot of different people, it kind of raises a little bit of a bigger question. What happens when accountability or talent decisions are unclear?
Okay. So I think when accountability is unclear, decisions become safer, not better.
So it goes back to the beginning of the conversation, where again, it goes back to the comfortability, it goes back to the safety factor, it goes back to what the leaders are feeling like, all right, this is what we got out of one interview, let's just go for it, we'll just deal with what we have.
Correct. So even organizational learning research shows that normalization of underperformance happens, right? Because we say, oh, everybody is like this. So, uh, there is slower improvement cycles, maybe gradual erosion of leadership confidence. And over a period of time, organization loses the ability to learn from talent decisions at all.
Wow.
Thing if I can think of is, disappearing feedback loops. I don't even know. So I was on an interview panel, and this gentleman did not make it. So, and it was a virtual one. We finished the interview, and a couple of hours later, I happened to call him, and I let him know that these are the reasons why we did not hire. He says, Vidya, I've been in this industry for good 24 years, and this is the first time someone called me and told me why I did not make it. Right?
Yeah.
Because the feedback loop is not happening.
Yep.
How do you expect someone to know how well I did or how badly I did in that interview? The reason.
Exactly. How are they supposed to learn and get better? So
Exactly.
how does this damage the system? What impact does this have on the system as a whole?
So what happens is, because there is so much of ambiguity and nothing is clear, organization doesn't get better in hiring, right? It just gets better in explaining why things happened. X number. So I think, yeah, we need to be a little more cognizant about the fact that we are dealing with human emotions, right? We are
Yeah.
not working with robocops that they would logically apply some math to the system and then say, oh, it works.
Oh, that's
Yes.
true. That's very true. I mean, I've seen that, and being on the other end of it, I think I've experienced that myself, right? At the other end of the feedback loop, where I have gone in interviews and, and not heard back, and whether positive or negative, and it kind of has left me, sitting with a lot of questions, and left me wondering, like, okay, is it the organization? Is it me? Like, what is happening? But it's nice talking with you and knowing that, oh, this feedback loop that we are so heavily not focusing on is not just impacting the hires themselves and the talent themselves, it's also impacting the organizations and the leaders and how they run. And then it throws the whole system off, it sounds like.
That's true.
Okay, so kind of like what it sounds like is the cost isn't just losing one hire, it's losing belief in the whole system. So what's interesting to me is many leaders, I feel like, recognize these issues. They know that they're happening fairly early on. So why do organizations tolerate bad hires longer than they should?
And this is classic behavioral economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
The loss aversion makes the leader fear admitting a mistake more than absorbing an ongoing cost. So the sunken cost bias keeps the organization invested in decisions they should revisit. So stability gets prioritized over quality, even though there's a long-term damage, uh, which is even far greater than what you can even fathom. So I guess that's what holds people back and say, why do we need to get into the trouble of, even thinking around those grounds?
So it's kind of like leaders feel more comfortable just having somebody there, and because of that, that's why they wait so long to fix any mistakes that involve a bad hire. But I mean, let's be honest, bad hires are pitfalls for money. So it sounds like these organizations and these leaders are ultimately losing money. So what's the point? What's the reason? Is it a human reason? Is it an organizational reason? I'm curious.
It's all about stability, right? Because we are saying let's be stable than looking at the quality at this point in time. Quality can be taken care of later.
So when does stability start sounding like an excuse?
Most of the times, right? When people don't, and it's all about the sunken cost, right? They want to revisit things. Why? Because if you open that up, it's like opening a Pandora's box, I may guess.
Okay, so delays feel safer, but at the same time, it's compounding all of the damage that's going on.
That's true. I couldn't
Okay.
have agreed on that.
Wow. Okay, so that's a completely different layer to all of this that gets overlooked. So how are these decisions perceived by the rest of the organization? So not just the leaders who are hiring these people and not just HR, but everybody else involved, because I can imagine that it's a snowball effect, right? Where one bad hire in one section of the company is going to impact all the other sections of the company.
So that's where when we talk about, uh, one of the strongest drivers of disengagement, because if there is a person who, is completely opposite of this hire, who is working hard and who believes in quality, who believes in productivity and profitability, probably gets disengaged and leads to attrition, which we are not even noticing.
Okay. Wow. That's really interesting. Okay. So I guess that kind of honestly leads me into my next question. How does inconsistency in talent decisions affect trust within the companies?
Believe me, you may also agree with me on this, Mahima. Employees notice patterns faster than leadership teams do.
Okay. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more on that one?
Of course, when we are talking about behaviors, when we are talking about decisions, the person who is facing these decisions, that's the end employee, they figure that out faster than the leadership assuming, say, or expecting people to understand, right? So if something is a favorism is going on, or maybe a wrong decision has been taken, or maybe there is a delay in the product quality vis-a-vis retaining a certain person. Why? Because you need stability. All these factors are being visible, right? It's not that we are living in a dark room and nobody sees it.
Yeah.
So people do, observe these things. And it's, as I said, it's faster than what the leadership teams expect them to see,
Yeah.
right? So this organization justice, which we are talking about, shows that perceived fairness right, drives trust more than the outcomes themselves,
Yeah.
right? And that's when I think talent decisions feel inconsistent, right? They stop feeling principled and start feeling personal or political,
Yeah.
even when there is an intent which is good.
Yeah, so they start to question the fairness. They start to question what is actually going on because even if they're, like you said, they're not seeing all of the decisions, but they feel it. You know,
Exactly.
they know what's going on because they're the ones who are living it day in and day out. So does intent matter then if consistency is missing?
Yes, it does. And believe me, once trust erodes, every future decision gets interpreted through skepticism.
Yep. Yep. And it's funny because trust erodes very quietly when employees start feeling like they can no longer trust their leaders or trust who they're working for, you know, they keep it to themselves. And by the time leaders notice, it's probably too late. The trust is gone.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, so we've talked about complexity, interviews, experience, accountability, trust, everything. Um, so I kind of want to step back for a moment and I want to ask you, what is one mindset shift leaders must make in order to improve their talent decisions?
So, if I had to take a decision, right, the shift is not from judgment to data. It is from the intuition alone to informed judgment.
What do you
It is,
mean?
yeah, it's about, the speed of defensibility, maybe consensus to ownership, and
Mm-hmm.
to clarity.
Okay. Um, so if leaders remember one thing, or if leaders need to remember one thing, what should it be?
It should be definitely not taking decisions just by the gut,
Mm-hmm.
but if there is a slightest of ambiguity, let's fall back on database decisions, right? So I've seen the strongest leadership teams
Mm-hmm.
treat talent decisions like capital allocation,
Mm-hmm.
right? High stakes, long horizon
Yeah.
investment, and it needs rigor. It demands rigor, rather, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there should be a lot of accountability. And not last but not the least, it's all about learning.
Mm-hmm.
How do build up on that learning? So if we have database for your documents, you need to also have database on the reason why we had taken the last decision, and also have the reasons what was the good, bad, and ugly. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have that, that learning is important, I guess. And
Yeah.
as a leader, it's not one interview done, put it under the rug and walk over it. It is, what did you learn from that behavior? What did you learn from that experience? And build on that. I've seen a lot of leaders do that, and they've been lucky because I'm not saying lucky is the right word to be used over here, but then that's what results in a
Yeah.
better hire in their organization.
So, if leaders can change how they decide to hire, it sounds like everything else downstream will change.
True that.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Uh, Confident talent decisions are clearly not just about having better resumes or more interviews or the way that you speak. It's about so much more judgment, accountability, consistency. When leaders change how they evaluate people, they don't just hire better, they build trust, culture, and long term performance, which I think is very pivotal. Uh, Thank you so much, Vidya Mathews, for being here today. I'm more than happy to have had this conversation with you. And to everybody watching, if you found this conversation interesting, or if you were interested to learn more about the challenges that hiring is facing today, that leaders are facing today, that even employees are facing today, tune in next week and we'll be back with a new topic for you. Thank you, and I hope everyone has an amazing day.